Live from the Spring Grove Cemetery in Darien, Connecticut, it is the 2020 Darien Memorial Day ceremony. We are at the state of Connecticut's Veterans Cemetery. This is a DAF media broadcast, and it's so good to be with you on this Memorial Day 2020. Damian Andrew joining you, and alongside me is longtime Darien resident and board member, Darien Public School System, John Cini. And John, a Memorial Day that we may never forget.
Definitely, Damien. Thanks for having me, and happy Memorial Day, everybody. I think there's definitely a different tone, to this year's ceremony, but I'm hoping we have a lot of viewers watching and from the Soldiers Cemetery here in Darien.
Obviously, the Darien Memorial Day Parade was canceled because of the ongoing COVID-19 public health crisis, but the organizers of the ceremony are staying within state guidelines as they have a small ceremony here at the cemetery. The Memorial Day Parade Grand Marshal, Alan Bixler, he was selected as Grand Marshal 2020, Vietnam veteran. He is still being recognized today. He will be part of this ceremony. And John, there will be a procession down Heckler Avenue, the honor guard along with Mr. Bixler, and they will make their way down Heckler and into the cemetery, and we will begin our Memorial Day ceremony.
So, Damien, I was just informed that the procession is actually leaving from the original site of the Fitch Home for Soldiers and Sailors. For those of you who don't know, it was built in July of 1864, 1 year after the Battle of Gettysburg. And Benjamin Fitch, who was a local Darien philanthropist and one of America's millionaires, established a home for soldiers who served in the Civil War and for the children whose fathers were killed in that war. Amazingly, at that time that it was built, Mr. Fitch donated about $500,000 to create the home. That home existed from 1864 to approximately 1947 up in the Norton Heights area, and then it was moved to Rocky Hill. One other point that's important, in 1881, when the Veterans Cemetery opened here at the for the Fitch home at the time.
John, every year during this ceremony, the Darien Girl Scouts recite the Gettysburg Address. They were unable to do that this year because of some of the restrictions at this ceremony, but they were able to record the Gettysburg Address, and let's take a listen.
The Gettysburg Address was delivered by President Abraham Lincoln during the American Civil War at the dedication of the Soldiers' National Cemetery in Gettysburg, Pennsylvania, on the afternoon of Thursday, November 19, 1863.
Happening only 4.5 months after the Union armies defeated those of the Confederacy at the Battle of Gettysburg, it is one of the best-known speeches in American history.
Traditionally, Girl Scouts of Darien have proudly read the Gettysburg Address from the grandstand at the Darien Memorial Day Parade. Today, in honor of the men and women who died while serving in the U.S. military, Darien Girl Scouts of all ages will read the iconic 271 words.
While we would rather be in the parade appropriately honoring the sacrifices of our heroes, we hope our effort will still stir your soul with the same national passion.
477 years ago,
our fathers brought forth on this continent
a new nation,
conceived in liberty,
dedicated to the proposition that all men are created equal.
Now we are engaged in a great civil war, testing whether that nation
or any nation so conceived and so dedicated
can long endure.
We are met on
You are watching the Darien Memorial Day ceremony live on the DAF Media Network as we are watching the honor guard procession here, and Alan Bixler is the Grand Marshal. They will make their way into the cemetery. Damian Andrew alongside John Cini, and while I have a moment, I want to recognize our DAF Media production crew: Sam Cragen, Chris Benedict, Luke Cini, Jack Kelly, and Graydon Overbeck. And here they come, John, into the Spring Grove Cemetery as we are just moments away now from the start of the Darien 2020 Memorial Day ceremony.
And Damien, the ceremony is an annual affair. A lot of people along the parade route don't, given the length, don't get the chance to see it, but it typically runs about an hour, and it's a really special moment here at the Cemetery for Soldiers and Sailors, as it was originally called.
And we are just moments away now from starting our ceremony. Here is the organizer of the Darien Memorial Day Parade, Mr. Terry Gaffney.
Don't trip. Come on, you got a seat in the front row. Good morning, everyone. We were hoping for sunnier weather, but as long as it's dry, I think we're good. On behalf of my fellow Monuments and Ceremonies Commissioners and the town of Darien, welcome. Normally, we would have a full retinue of individuals here comprised of the people who help keep us safe, secure, make our lives better and richer and more fulfilling. But the pandemic has necessarily limited us to a group of 5. So a number of us will be pinch hitting, filling in the roles that normally would be done by a member of the clergy, a member of the Girl Scouts, and an officially designated speaker. Before we begin, I'd like to thank those who helped make everything happen here today, starting with the Monuments and Ceremonies Commission of the town of Darien, which sponsors this event. That includes Sharon Bixler, who is the wife of our Grand Marshal, Alan Bixler. Alan Bixler, who is also a commissioner. Raleigh Holub. James Long. Rob Hulick. Loren Gomez. And myself, Terry Gaffney. I'd also like to thank VFW Post 6933, our one of our past Grand Marshals, Lenny Hunter, helped organize the Color Guard, which is comprised of John Driscoll, Brian O'Malley, Alex Hargrove, and J.C. Carter. I'd also like to thank the Darien Police Department, who has been very helpful in getting us here safe, especially Captain Jeremiah Marin and Chief Don Anderson. I'd also like to thank Boy Scout Troops 35 and 53 under the aegis of Grant Evans, troop leader, for getting all the flags that you see here planted, not only on the veterans' headstones here in the veterans section, but also the veterans in the private part of the cemetery as well. So I think they deserve a big round. I'd also like to thank, in tandem, the Darien Library, the Darien Foundation, DAF Media, Christopher Andrade, and Damian Andrew for making it possible to live stream this broadcast so others can see what we're doing here today from the safety and comfort of their homes. A shout out to DHS band leader Jonathan Grauer, who, because of strictures with the Board of Ed, could not have any member from the high school band here, but he got a volunteer and a high school graduate, Dominic Wood, who is going to blow taps for us today. Even though they are not here, I'd like to thank our local Girl Scout troops who have put together, since a Girl Scout normally delivers the Gettysburg Address, but that would put us at 6 people. The Girl Scout troops got together and put together a video where there are, I believe, 29 Girl Scouts who recite the Gettysburg Address online. And if you check the video later, you'll get the website that you can view that. It's really quite touching. I'd like to thank our Board of Selectmen, Kip Coons, David Martin, Krista McNamara, Sarah Newman, and First Selectman Jamie Stevenson, whose encouragement, support, and efforts made today's celebration possible. And last but not least, where would the organ players of the world be without the page turners? Without the town's executive secretaries, Karen Dunn and Linda O'Leary, nothing would happen in this town. So a big shout of applause for those two, because they make it all happen. They are the glue. And now, pinch hitting for a clergyman, I'd ask everybody just to bow their head for a moment and let us pray. Thank you, Lord, for a dry day. We are gathered to acknowledge and mourn those who gave their lives in service to our country. Look after them, we ask, and reward them for their sacrifice. And let us never forget why they did what they did. They did it for us. So hopefully we will continue to honor their memory and appreciate the blessing of freedom they helped secure for us. Now I'd like to introduce our fabulous 4. We have our Grand Marshal, Alan Bixler. First Selectman Jamie Stevenson. Captain Sue Ann Shore, U.S. Naval Reserve. Eagle Scout and Senior Patrol Leader Maximus Racanelli. Our Grand Marshal this year, Alan Bixler, is a Vietnam veteran. And not only has he served his country, but he has served this town of Darien in many, many capacities. He's been an assistant scout leader for Troop 53 in the Boy Scouts of America, an RTM member. He was commissioner of the Town and Recs Committee, Town Parks and Rec Committee, a Methodist youth group leader, and one of the stalwart volunteers for the Wreaths Across America, in addition to being a Monuments and Ceremonies Commissioner, and a friend to many. So I am going to call upon Grand Marshal Alan Bixler to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance. And once he does so, I have asked him to stay on for a moment and read a letter written to him by his son, Corey Bixler. Alan?
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. I have something here that was written by my son, actually a year ago, and it's a tribute to his grandfather, his great-grandfather, and me. It starts out, my great-grandfather served in World War I. My pop-pop served in World War II. My father served in Vietnam. Pop-pop wouldn't speak about his war experiences. But he did share one story with me, coding everything. When I was 9 years old, he told me about a young recruit he was given to show the ropes. He spent the first night out in a cold, muddy trench. Filthy, tired, hungry, the kid was scared to death. They sat back to back, using each other as a rest. Pop-Pop turned to ask him his name, but a bullet found the kid's head before he could speak, dead. Today we have it easy. We have freedom to vote for whoever we want and can yell and protest about anything. I think about my great-grandfather, my pop-pop, and my dad, and I realize I live in the best country in the world because of people like them. I give them a big thanks to you, Dad. You served in Vietnam. You are still crushing it. Thank you for everything. You are a patriot and a great man. You and your buddies did not get the respect you deserve when you came home, but now you finally are. I am honored to be part of this family of patriots and heroes who put their lives on the line, and I am honored on all those men and women who have fought the good fight, especially those who never came home. Today, we remember and honor you. Thank you.
Thank you, Alan, and thank you, Corey. Another part of our retinue that is missing are Chris Andrade singers. So I'm going to ask everyone to join in singing our national anthem. And if you feel a little bit hesitant, I will share with you what my pastor has told me. If God blessed you with a beautiful voice, sing loudly. And if he cursed you with an awful voice, sing all the louder to get even.
So proudly we hailed at the twilight's last gleam, whose broad
How about a round of applause for all those with bad voices who sung? Not that bad, right? I am now going to call upon Captain Sue Ann Shore, United States Naval Reserve, Girl Scout leader, Monuments and Ceremonies Commissioner, to recite Abraham Lincoln's Gettysburg Address. Sue Ann?
Fourscore and 7 years ago, our fathers brought forth on this continent a new nation, conceived in liberty and dedicated to the proposition that all men are created equal. Now we are engaged in a great civil war, testing whether that nation, or any nation so conceived and so dedicated, can long endure. We are met on a great battlefield of that war. We have come to dedicate a portion of that field as a final resting place for those who here gave their lives that that nation might live. It is altogether fitting and proper that we should do this. But in a larger sense, we cannot dedicate, we cannot consecrate, we cannot hallow this ground. The brave men, living and dead, who struggled here, have consecrated it, far above our poor power to add or detract. The world will little note, nor long remember what we say here, but it can never forget what they did here. It is for us the living, rather, to be dedicated here to the unfinished work which they who fought here have thus far so nobly advanced. It is rather for us to be here dedicated to the great task remaining before us, that from these honored dead we take increased devotion to that cause for which they gave the last full measure of devotion. That we here highly resolve that these dead shall not have died in vain, that this nation, under God, shall have a new birth of freedom, and that government of the people, by the people, for the people, shall not perish from this earth.
Thank you, Sue Ann. And again, I would just mention that when you get home and check out the live stream broadcast, they've got the Girl Scouts conglomerate speech, and it really is something you want to check out. Next, I'd like to call upon Eagle Scout and Senior Patrol Leader Maximus Racanelli to read General Logan's General Orders number 11.
On May 5th, 1868, General Logan, a Civil War veteran and Commander-in-Chief of the Grand Army of the Republic, a veterans organization, issued Order Number 11, which called for a National Day of Remembrance for those who died in the Civil War. This order would become the basis for Memorial Day, which remembers and honors all military personnel who have died serving in the United States Armed Forces. The proclamation reads as follows. 1. The 30th day of May, 1868, is dedicated for the purpose of strewing with flowers or otherwise decorating the graves of comrades who died in defense of their country during the late rebellion, and whose bodies now lie in almost every city, village, and hamlet churchyard in the land. In this observance, no form or ceremony is prescribed, but hosts and comrades will, in their own way, arrange such fitting services and testimonials of respect as circumstances may permit. We are organized, comrades, as our regulations tell us, for the purpose, among other things, of preserving and strengthening those kind and fraternal feelings which have bound together the soldiers, sailors, and marines who united to suppress the late rebellion. What can aid more to assure this result than by cherishing tenderly the memory of our heroic dead, who made their breasts a barricade between our country and its foe. Their soldiers' lives were the reveille of freedom to race in chains, and their death a tattoo of rebellious tyranny in arms. We should guard their graves with sacred vigilance, all that the consecrated wealth and taste of the nation can add to their adornment and security is but a fitting tribute to the memory of her slain defender. Let no wanton foot tread rudely on such hallowed grounds. Let pleasant paths invite the coming and going of reverent visitors and fond mourners. Let no vandalism of avarice, of neglect, no ravages of time testify to the present or to the coming generations that we have forgotten, as a people, the cost of free and undivided republic. If other eyes grow dull, and other hands slack, and other hearts cold in the solemn trust, ours shall keep it well, as long as the light and warmth of light remain in us. Let us then, at the time appointed, gather around their sacred remains, and garland the passionless mounds above them with choicest flowers of springtime. Let us raise above them the dear old flag they saved from dishonor. Let us in solemn presence renew our pledges to aid and assist those whom they have left among us, sacred charges upon the nation's gratitude, the soldiers, the sailors, widow, and orphan. It is the purpose of the Commander-in-Chief to inaugurate this observance with the hope it will be kept upon from year to year. With a survivor of the war remains to the honor the memory of his departed comrades. He earnestly desires the public press to call attention to this order and lend its friendly aid in bringing it to notice of comrades in all parts of the country in time for simultaneous compliance therewith. Department comrades will use every effect to make this order effective.
Thank you, Maximus. I now call upon First Selectman Jamie Stevenson to read the roll of honor of those Darien residents who lost their lives in service to our country, and Grand Marshal Alan Bixler to ring the bell to commemorate them. 3 rings of the bell reflect our respect and honor for those who are lost.
The Darien Roll of Honor from the Civil War, 1861 to 1865. Carl Ackerman, James H. Bates, Louis H. Benedict, Joseph Bushby, Nathan R. Bixby, Charles H. Clock, Horace Curtis, Philip Fortune, Michael Harmon, Frederick Henderson, William H. Howe, William H. Howman, Edward S. Hoyt, Isaac L. Hoyt, Elias Johnson, George D. Jordan, Frank LaRoche, Samuel Maglew, John Mallon, William H. Northrop, Gabriel W. Platt, John Price, Franklin H. Schofield, Albert O. Seeley, Silas F. Slauson, Thomas Smith, Jacob W. Vincent, Joseph Void, Isaac Weed, Raymond Weed, Adolph Werner, James A. Whaley, George W. Wilmot. From World War I, 1917 to 1918. David C. Bispham, Lawrence F. Callahan, Martin H. Gill, Wilfred T. Lowndes, Murtagh C. MacDonald, Edward G. Punzelt, Ernest F. Sexton, George Straka. From World War II, 1941 to 1945. Sanford Adams, Eric Allen, William A. Akrigg II, Elton S. Barrett, Orrin K. Boyce, James Butts, Joseph A. Chase, Peter T. Chester, Horace G. Cleveland III, Louis Codling, David O. Devlin, Anthony R. Freight, Raymond L. Howe, Pasquale G. Improda, Lawrence H. Isbell, Thomas W. Jenkins, Jefferson M. Johnson, John L. Masterson, George R. Miller, Alan R. Morehouse, Arthur L. Nielsen, William T. O'Neill Jr., Francis W. O'Toole, Otis Overton, Kenneth C. Phillips, John Pine, Louis E. Rayner, Thomas F. Rendler, David L. Rosenberg, Charles B. Rossi, Gordon S. Smith, Thomas F. Smith, Stephen J. Tansick, Torker D. Tokel, Julius W. Torok, Anthony Vitti, Donald Frothingham Jr., Rosario F. Pollenberry, Harold D. Parody, Clarence C. Walker. And from the Korean War, 1950 to 1953, George R. Broadhurst, James A. Dooley Jr., Eugene Murphy, Julius C. Nachi, and Robert J. Perkinson. And from the Vietnam War, 1958 to 1975, Alan L. Deirdrickson, John B. Geeson Jr., James S. MacArthur, David I. Mixter, William R. Patience Jr., and John B. Sherman.
Thank you, Jamie. Thank you, Alan. I now ask everyone to raise those beautiful voices and others and join in singing only the first chorus of America the Beautiful. Nice, thank you. Since we did not have an official designated speaker for today's ceremony due to limitations, I have asked Captain Sue Ann Shore to say a few words for us, and I hope everybody saw the Memorial Day section in the Darien Times this week. I personally looked at and read every caption of all 402 pictures in there. And in addition to being struck by how many people in this small town have served this country, immediately upon finishing it, I could name a half a dozen or more friends in town I know who are veterans who are not in there. So even that newspaper does not accurately reflect the level of service men and women in this town, including Sue Ann Shore and her husband Craig, who were not in the section. You've got to have a picture at home somewhere next year. So I'm going to call on Sue Ann Shore to just share a few thoughts of what Memorial Day is for us. Sue Ann?
Thanks, Terry. So, Terry asked me to speak a few days ago, and so I was sitting at my desk sort of reflecting on what few words I might want to share this morning. And I was scrolling through my email past all the emails for the Memorial Day sale, you know, yay, that's a great excuse. But I know we all know that are here that that's not really what it's about. I am personally a big fan, though, of not reinventing the wheel, and I found two messages in my email that I think really illustrate the meaning of Memorial Day. And I also think that they'll give you a brief insight into how the Navy today communicates with its sailors. So I'm a Navy Reserve sailor and have been for almost 25 years. The commander of the Navy Reserve Forces Command, Rear Admiral John Schomer, sent out this message to the over 49,000 selected reserve sailors serving in the Navy today. And he said, approximately 1 million men and women of the U.S. military have lost their lives in defense of our nation since the founding of this great republic. For many, Memorial Day signifies the start of summer. Unfortunately, it can be easy to overlook the significance of Memorial Day and what it means to all of us. Today, Monday, May 25th, our country will honor all of the brave men and women who have made the ultimate sacrifice. Memorial Day, as Decoration Day gradually came to be known, originally honored only those lost while fighting in the Civil War. During World War I, the United States found itself embroiled in another major conflict, and the holiday evolved to commemorate American military personnel who died in all wars, including World War II, the Vietnam War, the Korean War, and the wars in Iraq and Afghanistan. I anticipate for many this Memorial Day weekend will look vastly different than previous ones. With social distancing efforts in place to slow down the spread of COVID-19, Memorial Day parades and events have been canceled. But this doesn't mean that Memorial Day is canceled. Far from it. I encourage every Navy reservist, and I encourage you as well, that no matter where you are, no matter your circumstances, to spend time remembering those who lost their lives and could not come home, reflecting on their service and why we have the freedoms that we enjoy today. Take time with your families to talk about the meaning of Memorial Day and why it is important. Lastly, use this weekend to focus on your own values of service. Remind yourself of your oath and what it means to be a citizen sailor. So that message from Admiral Schomer, I think whether you're serving or not, I believe that we can each use these words to help us reflect on what our values are and who we are as citizens of the United States. So my current position, I'm serving as the Reserve Fleet Oceanographer for the Pacific Fleet. Admiral John Aquilino is the commander of the Pacific Fleet, and he, along with Fleet Master Chief Honea, sent the following message to all of the sailors in the Pacific Fleet. As our Navy and nation approach this year's Memorial Day, I ask that each of you pause to remember those who have gone before us and paid with their lives in defense of our country. Remembering our greatest generation, whose numbers diminish every day, for their service and sacrifice as we commemorate 75 years of security and prosperity since the end of World War II. Their legacy lives on in us. We too have sworn an oath to make the same sacrifice if duty calls. We shall never forget, especially in the face of this global pandemic. Fleet Honea and I are so proud and grateful for the tireless and determined approach you have taken in meeting the challenge of COVID-19. Your grit and commitment has ensured our allies and partners and competitors understand and recognize that our maritime forces are ready to fight and win. Pacific Fleet sailors, medical and support personnel have been on the front lines of this battle. The lessons learned and earned by USS Theodore Roosevelt and USS Kidd crews are saving lives, and results from their testing are informing America's approach to fighting the virus. As our ships prepare to sail again, friends and foe alike should take note. Our Navy remains ready. For the thousands of you enduring the extraordinary mitigation measures, we recognize the additional burden they can place on you and your families. Your professionalism in fulfilling them is the reason we have combat-ready ships and submarines operating throughout the Pacific. Thank you for your dedication. Your service in the face of this pandemic and great power competition is an inspiration. Keep charging. Admiral Aquilino and Fleet Master Chief Honea send. So I hope that each of you can find words of inspiration as well as food for thought in the words of these great leaders. Thank you.
Thank you, Sue Ann. And now we will have the presentation of the memorial wreath by First Selectman Jamie Stevenson and Grand Marshal Alan Bixler. I'll help carry it over. Leave it by Oscar Pex. Right? You want to carry it over? I'll carry it. You two lift it. And now I'm going to ask the VFW Honor Guard, composed of John Driscoll, Brian O'Malley, Alex Hargrove, and J.C. Carter, to honor those who have fallen with the military salute. Thank you. And now, Darien High School graduate Dominic Wood with taps. Thank you, Dominic. Next, I'm going to call upon First Selectman Jamie Stevenson to share her thoughts and close us out with a closing prayer or benediction.
Thank you, Terry. Thank you, everyone who's here and everyone watching from home. Let us bow our heads in final prayer. Gracious and loving God, grant that we may appreciate and treasure the freedom that is our gift and our heritage, and that we may never forget the great price at which it was purchased for all of us. We remember on this very special bicentennial Memorial Day all who have served and are serving in the armed forces of our great nation. We ask for a special blessing this Memorial Day upon the brave members of our new United States Space Force. Dear Lord, we ask that you watch over all veterans of this land. Comfort our soldiers who've returned from battle with the lasting yet sometimes invisible wounds of war. Pray for their families, lighten their burdens, relieve their suffering and pain, and restore to them the blessings of health and peace. We pray for those laid to eternal rest here before you, who have paid the ultimate sacrifice in service to our country. These brave souls understood that freedom prescribed to us by our forefathers must be protected regardless of the cost. May your perpetual light of love and peace shine upon them. Let this also be a day we remember with gratitude and honor the sacrifices of our modern-day soldiers, our nurses and doctors, first responders, grocers and pharmacists, who, in the face of a silent war still raging around the world, return to the front lines each day to heal the sick and protect our communities. May the good work which you, God, have begun in them be brought to perfection, that this land may heal and prosper, and that there may be lasting peace and health throughout our world. All this we ask you, Almighty and gracious Father, in your holy name. Amen.
Thank you, Jamie. That concludes our presentation today. I would just ask that while you're here, before we all go our separate ways, to take a moment and look around you. The 2,165 veterans lying in this cemetery each gave their time and sacrifice to our country. And I would just say, take a moment, look around you, take a stroll through the cemetery. There are people buried here from many, many wars, from many, many nations. Some of them have fought in wars we're all familiar with. Others have fought in wars that some don't even know about. The Philippine insurrection, Mexican border incursion, the Boxer Rebellion. All of these are buried here, as well as Civil War. And again, one other side note I would say about this cemetery, you're standing in the first branch of the United States government that was completely integrated. If you go through this cemetery, you will see headstones that say Connecticut Volunteer, and then Colored Infantry, which was an official designation. Black and white were buried here together 140 years ago. The nation is slowly catching up, and hopefully we'll get there sooner rather than later. But there is a lot to be learned here in this cemetery. I would encourage all of you to take a look around. And then finally, I would just like to say thank you all for coming, and those who are watching at home, thank you for tuning in and watching. Enjoy your day.
You have been watching the Darien 2020 Memorial Day ceremony on the DAF Media Network. That was the chair of the Darien Memorial Day Parade, Terry Gaffney, with some great closing thoughts. Damian Andrew alongside John Cini. And John, I'm going to give you a chance to talk here. Just your thoughts on this day. We said it at the outset. A day we'll look back on this Memorial Day with what's going on with the global pandemic. One we'll always remember, but certainly a day that is always reserved to recognize those who have given their lives for the freedom of this country.
Yeah, I think I'd add, Damien, that it's probably one of the most intimate ceremonies we'll hopefully ever have.
Yeah.
In this on this Memorial Day, and it's a special one. This is the town's 200th anniversary, and we're celebrating in a very different way this year. June 12th is its actual birthday. June 12th.
Yep.
1820, the charter for the new town of Darien was brought from the General Assembly by horseback by Thaddeus Bell.
It was a very intimate gathering, as you said, and emotional at that. But I want to thank everybody for watching on the DAF Media Network. I want to also recognize our DAF Media production crew, all student volunteers, and 4 of the 5 here today, Darien High School seniors. And this has certainly been a challenging time for them. Nice to have them back on a live stream broadcast. Graydon Overbeck, Sam Cragen was our director, Chris Eggs-Benedict, our producer, Luke Cini, Camera One, and our freshman with us this morning, Jack Kelly. Want to thank all of them for all the work they have done throughout this academic school year. John, want to thank you for being here as always. Next year, hopefully you and I will be
back on the road.
Back on the road for the Darien Memorial Day Parade. But we're going to leave you with the Gettysburg Address by the Girl Scouts of Darien. Have a wonderful Memorial Day, everybody. Take care. God bless.
The Gettysburg Address was delivered by President Abraham Lincoln during the American Civil War at the dedication of the Soldiers' National Cemetery in Gettysburg, Pennsylvania, on the afternoon of Thursday, November 19, 1863.
Happening only 4.5 months after the Union armies defeated those of the Confederacy at the Battle of Gettysburg, it is one of the best-known speeches in American history.
Traditionally, Girl Scouts of Darien have proudly read the Gettysburg Address from the grandstand at the Darien Memorial Day Parade. Today, in honor of the men and women who died while serving in the U.S. military, Darien Girl Scouts of all ages will read the iconic 271 words.
While we would rather be in the parade appropriately honoring the sacrifices of our heroes, we hope our effort will still stir your soul with the same national passion.
407 years ago,
our fathers brought forth on this continent
a new nation,
conceived in liberty,
dedicated to the proposition that all men are created equal.
Now we are engaged in a great civil war, testing whether that nation
or any nation so conceived and so dedicated can long endure.
We are met on a great battlefield of that war.
We have come to dedicate the portion of that field
as a final resting place for those who here gave their lives that that nation might live.
It is altogether fitting and proper that we should do this.
But in a larger sense, we cannot dedicate, we cannot consecrate, we cannot hallow this ground.
The brave men, living and dead, who struggled here have consecrated it far above our poor power to add or detract.
The world will little note nor long remember what we say here,
but it can never forget what they did here.
It is for us, the living, rather to be dedicated here to the unfinished work which they who have fought here have thus far so nobly advanced.
It is rather for us to be here, dedicated to the great task before us.
That from these honored dead we take increased devotion to that cause for which they gave the last full measure of devotion.
That we here highly resolve that these dead shall not have died in vain.
That this nation, under God,
shall have a new birth of freedom.
And that government of the people,
by the people, for the people,
shall not perish from the earth.